I woke up to the sound of my phone buzzing on the nightstand. At first, I thought it was a text from one of my friends, or maybe from my boss, but when I picked up the phone, I saw it was from an unknown number. I opened it up and looked at the attachment, which was an image. It was a picture of my wife, Emily. She was sitting next to a man I didn't recognize at a bar somewhere. Her hand was resting on his thigh, and they were both looking at each other in a way that made my stomach turn. "Hey, honey, want a coffee?" Emily calls out from the kitchen, the sound of mugs and a coffee machine whirring punctuating the weekend morning air. I swallow hard. "Yeah, of course," I say, surprised at how calm I sound even though I'm shaking. I look closer at the picture. Maybe it's from before we met, but no, it can't be. Emily's wearing the bracelet I got her last month, and Samuel's wearing that stupid leather jacket he bought after he got his promotion. This photo is recent. I hear Emily humming a Dave Matthews Band song to herself again. I've been with her for 10 years, and I can recognize every tune she hums, every look in her eyes, or at least I thought I did. I slowly put the phone down on the nightstand. "James, coffee's ready." "On my way." I get up and glance at myself in the mirror on our dresser. Same as any other Saturday morning, I guess. Bedhead, college t-shirt, plaid pajama pants, but I feel different. My eyes feel different, like they've gone from hot to cold. Emily is in the kitchen, pouring coffee into 2 mugs. I see her standing there, dressed in her pajamas, and for a second, I think maybe I imagined the whole thing. "Good morning," she says, handing me my cup of coffee. The smile that used to give me butterflies. Morning. I sip the coffee, looking at her. "Did you sleep okay?" "Yeah, dinner went long. You were passed out by the time I got back." She's so good at lying, I wonder how many times she's done it before. "How are the college girls?" I ask, trying to sound nonchalant as I observe her expression. "Oh, the usual. Lisa's obviously going through a divorce, so lots to unpack." She takes a big swig of coffee, not quite looking me in the eye. I thought of our neighbor, Samuel. He and his wife had been over for dinner just last week. "Speaking of processing," I say, "Marcus called, asked if I wanted to go on a hiking trip next weekend. Figured it'd be a good way to clear my head." She raised her eyebrows. "Really? How come?" "Stuff I gotta work out. You know." I force a smile. She reached over the counter to take my hand, and I almost pulled it away, but stopped myself. "You work too hard. A little vacation with Marcus would do you some good." I almost laughed at the irony of that statement, but instead, I just nodded. Then, my phone buzzed again. It was another text from the same number. "Thought you should know. There's more." For some reason, that message made me nervous. I took a sip of my coffee and tried to ignore it, looking at Emily as she made breakfast, humming to herself. "I'm going to text Marcus back," I say, getting out of bed. "Figure out what we're doing next weekend." "Sounds good. I might ring Aisha, see if she wants to get lunch or something." Standing at the top of the stairs, I stopped and looked back at my wife. This woman who I'd lived with for 10 years and now wasn't sure if I knew it all. "Emily?" She asks, glancing up at me with a silver bracelet on her wrist. "I love you," I say to her, the words burning my tongue. "Love you too, hun," she says back. Right smile, right tone, right answer. Back in our bedroom, I look at my phone, considering whether to reply to the message from the unknown number. Samuel is leaving for golf outside, and I watch him put his clubs into the trunk of his car. He looks up at me and waves. I wave back. Then I write back to the unknown number. "Show me everything." "Downloading," it says. 3 days later, I was still downloading everything. But I didn't know that at this point, as I sat down in the chair by the window with my phone in my hand, listening to Emily talking on the phone in the kitchen. It was a regular Saturday morning, I thought. A regular Saturday morning in a regular marriage, but it wasn't. More messages came through. I looked at them all, trying to absorb the information. I took my laptop into my office, telling my wife I had some work to get done. In a way, that was true. "James?" Emily calls from downstairs. "I'm off to the gym. You want anything?" "No, I'm good," I respond evenly. It's only been 3 days, but I'm getting better at it. I heard her get her things and leave the house. Once she was gone, I took out the secret phone I'd discovered the day before in a shoebox in her closet. I looked through some of the messages she'd been exchanging with Samuel and Ryan, and others. There was at least a dozen different men she was having an affair with. My phone rang. It was my lawyer. "Hey, you know the hike this weekend." I see the typing indicator pop up. At least Marcus is real. I need some evidence of sanity right now. Hey, you want to stop by tonight? I need to talk to you about something. I didn't have to wait long for a response. Of course, brother. Everything okay? Is anything okay? No, I'll tell you on the way. 3 dots then. I'm here if you need me sooner. That last part makes me choke up a bit. I put the phone down and turn back to the computer. There's a new email from the anonymous sender containing another hotel receipt. Attached is a video of her walking with Ryan. She's wearing the bracelet I bought her for her birthday. The doorbell rings. I look out the office window. Samuel's car is parked in his driveway. I clench my fists. I walk downstairs. I can see his silhouette through the sandblasted glass of the front door. James? His grin is wide as I open the door. Hey man, is Emily home? She's at the gym, I say, standing in the doorway. What's up? Oh, I just wanted to drop off that casserole dish from last week, he says, holding up the glass pan that Emily had given him leftovers in. Ah, how kind of you. I take it from him, noticing how he's trying to peer around me. You must have enjoyed it. Yeah, your wife's a great cook. He laughs, and I feel a little pang of anger. Yes, she is, I reply. Hey, you still golf at River Oaks? Yeah, every weekend. Why, you interested? Maybe. Emily said you've been giving her some pointers. He looked at me strangely for a second and then said, Oh, really? Must have been a long time ago. Must have been. I pat the casserole dish. Thanks for this. Yeah, no problem, man. He turns to leave, but not without his usual gusto. Say hi to Emily for me. Sure. I shut the door gently, listening to him walk away before exhaling. I looked at my phone. It was Emily again. Coffee with Aisha after gym. Eat without me. I look at the tracking app. She's at Murphy's bar, not the gym. I switch to the security feed I set up yesterday. She's already there, sitting next to Ryan at their usual corner table. Okay, thanks, I reply, including my own heart emoji. I went back upstairs and began writing a list of all the times, dates, and places. The evidence was damning, and it was becoming very difficult to deny what was happening any longer. Then another message came. Do you want to know the final piece of evidence? My gut sank. I knew I couldn't ignore it any longer. Yes, I text back. Show me. He had attached a video. I opened the file and watched as the last hope of my marriage shattered into a million pieces. Afterward, I just sat there for a while, thinking about the past decade with my wife. Then I picked up the phone and called Marcus. Hey, I thought about it. Can we meet tonight? I want to organize something bigger than a hiking trip. He responded right away. Name the place. I'll be there. I looked around the room, at the life Emily had built for herself in the shadows of our marriage. As I organized the papers and documents into neat folders, I felt a sense of peace coming over me. Same place as always, 8 p.m. And Marcus? Don't mention this to anyone. Sure thing. Is everything okay? I think about the video, about the casserole dish, about Emily's silver bracelet. Not about me, I reply. 8 p.m. I closed the lid of the laptop and stood up, looking out the window. Samuel was washing his car across the street and had hung his leather jacket on the handle of the garage door. 2 doors down, Ryan's wife was tending to her garden, unaware of the fact that her husband was at Murphy's bar at that very moment, holding my wife's hand. I had everything I needed. Now, I just had to figure out where to start. The sun had set when I left my house, putting the documents in my briefcase. It took me 20 minutes to drive to the city center. As I passed Murphy's bar, I saw Ryan's car was still parked outside. I circled the area a couple of times before parking in the visitor parking outside Maxwell & Associates. It was 7:45 a.m. I didn't have time to wait for Marcus. This had to be my first stop. I decided to meet with Sarah Maxwell, and she agreed to see me when I called. It had been years since I'd stepped foot in Maxwell & Associates. The place hadn't changed much. As I walked through the front doors, I remembered the time when Sarah and I were friends in college. Little did I know back then that she would become my lawyer. Hello, Mr. Simmons, the receptionist said. Mrs. Maxwell is expecting you. Please come with me. Sarah's office was on the top floor, with a view of the city skyline. She greeted me with a smile, but it quickly disappeared when she saw the look on my face. James, what's going on? Sarah, I need your help, and you can't tell anyone. She points to the chair across from her. Close the door, she says. I do as she says and then put my laptop on the table in front of her. You remember Emily? I ask her, and I know she does. She was at our wedding. James, she says with revelation in her voice, before all that, you have to see something. I began to open the folders. Images of photographs, hotel receipts, bank statements, text messages, and more began to appear on screen. I looked at Sarah and saw her staring at it with a stoic expression and a white-knuckle grip on her pen. How long have you known? She says. 5 days. But it looks like these, I point at the screen, are about 2 years old. Just the one person? 3, at least. Maybe more. Sarah scribbled down some more notes. I noticed her eyes had a little more life in them now. You said the photos were dated? I have the evidence. I know when, where, how much. I know everything. She looked up at me, alarmed. Legally? All this information was given to me by someone. I pieced it together. Who? I shook my head. Anonymous, but very detailed. She leaned back, looking at me with suspicion. What do you want, James? Everything. The word slips out more forcefully than I mean it to. I want her to lose everything. That's not you. I'm not me. She nodded slowly, then got out a notepad. Tell me everything. I need to know the whole story. I spent the next hour explaining everything to her. You're doing well, she says. But we have to be cautious. If we go too quickly, she'll cover her tracks. Right. We have to get a discovery request in before she realizes it's coming. I took out a USB stick from my pocket. Did you really think I didn't copy everything? She looked at me surprised. You've changed, she said. I needed to... She opened up the files and began to look through them. These money transfers are big. Is this a joint account? Some of them. Any purchase over $500 in the last 3 years, I've kept a record of. The presents? Kept the receipts, taken pictures of, the watch she gave Ryan? I found the receipt for it in her email. I whistled. You've really been busy. Not really. The lawyer started typing something up on her computer. I'll get started on the paperwork. But James, are you sure you want to go nuclear like this? There are other options. She's been mocking me, Sarah. They all have. Making a fool of me all this time while... I pause, steadying my voice. I want it to be slow. It won't be easy. I don't mind. I've gotten good at acting. She looked me up and down again and sighed. Fine. But we're doing this my way. We'll follow the rules. Okay. Have you mentioned this to anyone? Marcus. He's helped me understand. Good. Let's just keep it to us for now, okay? My phone vibrated. It was Emily. Making your favorite tonight. Could you grab some wine on the way home? Sarah reads over my shoulder as I reply. Of course. Can't wait. You're freaking me out a bit, she says. I freak myself out a bit. I get up, grab my laptop. How long? 3 days to get everything ready. Then we submit. After that, she gestures with her hands. We'll see how she takes it. She won't see this coming. That's what scares me. Animals are most dangerous when they're trapped, James. I think of the video on my computer, of the silver bracelet Emily was... I stop myself. I do dangerous. Sarah led me to the door and said she'd call me when the papers were ready. And James, she continued, be careful, all right? Of her, but also of yourself. I got in the elevator and checked my phone. Emily was at the grocery store. I sent a text to Marcus. It's begun. Heading to Sarah. He texted back right away asking, You okay? On the way. Drinks after? Usual time and spot. I step out of the elevator into the lobby. I can see Samuel's car outside through the glass doors. He's standing next to it, looking for someone else. He doesn't see me. I take my phone out one last time. Okay, I called the lawyer. It went well. Good. Stand by for more, the message responded. I left the cafe and stood outside, feeling the sun on my face. It was going to be a long day, I realized. And something told me it was going to be one of the most important days of my life, too. I needed to harden myself, to prepare myself for what was coming. My phone buzzed in my pocket, and I took it out, looking at the screen. It was Emily sending me a picture of some wine bottles. Red or white? You pick, I text back. You always make the best choices. I spend the rest of the afternoon getting ready. There are a lot of last-minute things to do, and I still have some rehearsing to do to make sure I get everything right. It's not until 6:30 p.m. that I pull into the driveway. Emily's car is there, parked in its usual spot. I see her moving around inside the house, getting things ready for the dinner party. I set the table, making sure everything was perfect. Emily was preparing dinner, thinking this was just another dinner party, but it wasn't. She had no idea what I had found on her computer. "Babe, can you see if we have enough ice?" Emily asks, in the tone of perfect hostess she's been rehearsing. "Did it already," I say, setting Ryan's wife's place card at a different angle. We're all set. The doorbell rings at 7 o'clock sharp. Samuel and Karen are the first to arrive. They live next door, after all. "Right on time," Emily says, grinning as she opens the door. "Come on in." I see Samuel's eyes follow her, but she doesn't notice. "James, this is incredible," Karen says, picking up one of the napkins I've folded. "Everything should be where it belongs," I say back, and notice Samuel wince a little at the way I say it. Ryan and Michelle were next, followed by Marcus and AITA. I had insisted on Marcus coming. I needed someone in the room who knew what was about to happen. "This is so nice," Michelle says, taking a glass of wine from Emily. "We have to do this more." Ryan chuckled and put a hand on his wife's back, saying, "Be careful. She might just take you up on that." I saw Michelle's smile falter for a second as she looked back and forth between Emily and Ryan. It was so subtle, but now that I knew what to look for, I saw these little signs everywhere. "Dinner is served," Emily says. "Please, take your seats." The first few minutes of the dinner go smoothly. I stay silent, observing how the guests try to keep up their lies. Samuel not looking Emily in the eyes. Karen talking about their trip to Mexico. Ryan making sure not to get too close to my wife. Michelle showing AITA pictures on her phone. "Oh," I say abruptly, during a momentary pause in the conversation. "Emily, I checked your phone for the recipe you gave to Karen, and I found some very interesting texts." She stopped with a forkful of food halfway to her mouth. "Oh, yeah, something about a midnight rendezvous being worth every risk. I gotta say, you're pretty poetic when you want to be." The room went cold. I looked over at Karen and saw she was glaring at Samuel. He was staring intently at his glass of wine. "I don't recall sending those texts," Emily says cautiously. "No? Let me think," I say. "Didn't you say something about missing that big, strong man? And something about a silver bracelet glinting in a hotel lobby?" Michelle looked back and forth between Ryan and Emily as if she was starting to understand. "James," Emily says, concerned, "I don't know if you should be talking about this during dinner." "Why not?" I take a sip of wine. "We're all friends here, no secrets." I looked at him and nodded. "Friends," I say. "Ryan, you had that work conference last month, right? In Chicago?" He gripped his fork tighter, his knuckles turning white. "Yes, I did. Well, Emily was there as well. Didn't hear that you guys bumped into each other, though." Michelle put her wine glass down on the table. "Ryan? Let's talk about something else," Samuel says nervously. "Why?" I respond, still with that friendly tone. "Is this making you uneasy, Samuel? Should we talk about golf lessons?" Karen stood up. "What golf lessons?" Everything seemed to be falling apart. Emily's breath was quickening as she tried to regain control over the situation. "James, don't do this," she says. "What are you doing?" I got up and walked over to the sideboard. I picked up my laptop and said, "What am I doing?" "Well, I'm having dinner with my friends. I'm telling them stories. And I'm also showing them who you really are." I opened the screen and turned the laptop around, facing the table. On the screen, they could all see the pictures I'd taken of Emily with Samuel at Murphy's bar, of Emily and Ryan at the hotel lobby, and of the receipts and dates. Michelle was the first to react. She stood up and grabbed her purse, tears streaming down her face. "How long?" she asked Ryan. Ryan opened his mouth, but no words came out. Karen didn't say anything. She just looked at Samuel with an intense gaze. After a few seconds, she said, "Get up. We're leaving." "Karen, I can—" Samuel begins. "Don't." Her voice is ice. "Just don't." Emily doesn't move and watches as her systematic betrayal was laid out on the screen. "Why like this?" she eventually asks, glancing up at me. "Why not just tell me on my own?" "Because they needed to hear it too." I shut the laptop. "Because I don't want to lie for you anymore." The room emptied after that, Michelle rushing out with Ryan at her heels, Karen taking Samuel by the hand and walking him out, and Marcus and AITA standing there awkwardly for a moment. "Just holler if you need anything," Marcus whispers before exiting. Everyone's gone, except for Emily and I. There's files, I tell him, breaking the silence as I lay a fat manila envelope down on the table. My lawyer has copies of everything. You should go through them before Monday. She was shaking as she reached for the envelope. Who told you? Does it really matter? She pulls the contents of the envelope out, looking at them with a mixture of horror and disbelief. What do you want? I want a divorce, I told her, standing up. I want the truth to come out, and I want you to know what it feels like to lose everything, to have your entire life crumble beneath your feet, to lose your husband, your family, and everyone you care about, just like I did. I left her there at the dining room table with the damning evidence of her lies which had taken everything from me. A moment later, I heard her begin to cry. My phone buzzed in my pocket as I was halfway up the stairs. I pulled it out and saw a message from the unknown number. Phase 1 complete. Ready for Phase 2? I replied with a simple, yes. That night, I found it difficult to sleep. Emily stayed up late, crying and making phone calls. I heard her pacing around downstairs. First the kitchen, then the living room, then up to the guest bedroom. Eventually, the sound of her quiet sobbing could be heard through the ceiling. I lay in bed awake, thinking about what to do next. By the time the sun came up, I still hadn't had a wink of sleep. I got up and went to the shower, got dressed, and went into my study. The following morning, I was in my study, writing an email. It was to Emily's boss, and I was trying to figure out exactly how to word it. But then my phone rang. Are you ready for the next step? It's too late, I reply. I'll send them an email, I thought. It's the least I can do after what she did for me. I'll make sure to highlight her affair with the regional director and all that money she stole from the company. There's no undo button, Marcus messages, so be sure before you send it. I've attached the last piece of evidence below. It's a recording from the company parking garage, which would make any HR director shudder. That's the point, I say back to Marcus. I heard Emily downstairs talking on the phone. I heard the names Karen and Michelle, and then heard her begging. I was preparing to send 3 different emails to HR, legal, and the board of directors. James? Emily's calling me from upstairs. Can we talk? I'm working, I say back. Come on, let's talk about this. I click send and the emails shoot out into cyberspace. There's nothing to figure out, I yell back. I got a text message back, this time not from a number I recognized. Phase 2 initiated. Stand by for confirmation. I heard Emily coming down the stairs and closed the laptop. She came down a moment later, looking weary. Karen still isn't picking up, she says. Michelle says she's going to tell everyone at the club. Shouldn't have done what you did. She comes into the office, arms crossed. Is this what you want, for us to lose everything? We? I ask, facing her now. What did we build, Emily? A house of lies. Not everything was a lie. I heard a ding as I received a confirmation email from the HR system, acknowledging my anonymous report. Emily looked over at me. What are you doing? Work email. I shut the laptop calmly. Don't you have a meeting to prepare for on Monday? The way I said that must have made her suspicious. What did you do to him? I didn't do anything, Emily. She looks at her phone. No, she says in a low voice. No. Something wrong? She glanced up at me, comprehension dawning in her eyes. You didn't. I told you. Everything has a price. She took a few steps back, holding her phone in her hand, and looked at the screen. She was getting more and more notifications. They're putting me on leave, pending an investigation. What did you... The truth always comes out. This is my job, James. She's on the verge of tears. This is my livelihood. That you put on the line when you chose that our marriage wasn't fulfilling enough. Her phone rang. The regional director. She quickly hit the decline button. I need to take some money out of the savings account, she says. I have to call a lawyer. Really? That's funny. I sit back down at my desk. 'Cause I just froze the joint accounts this morning. Sarah told me I should do it. Sarah Maxwell? You went to Sarah? She says hi, by the way. Said she didn't like being lied to all these years at her dinner parties. She sat down in the chair next to the door, trying to comprehend how her life had just been destroyed in a matter of minutes. Her phone vibrated again. Perhaps it was Ryan or Samuel. What do you want from me? she asks. Nothing, I tell her, getting to my feet and grabbing my keys. Nothing anymore. Where are you going? Meeting Marcus for coffee, unless you're going to tell me I can't. She flinches at my tone and her phone buzzes again, HR saying they need a reply to their email right away. James, come on, she pleads again. We can fix it. I stopped at the door, looking back at her. You know what's funny? I actually believe you. I think you believe everything you just told me. With that, I left her there and drove to meet Marcus. As I was on my way, I received a text from the unknown number. HR investigation initiated. Board meeting planned for Monday morning. Phase 2 is a go. I replied with a single word, good. When I arrived at the coffee shop, Marcus already had a couple cups of coffee ready. He looked like he had been following the events closely. You okay? He asks when I sit down. Yeah, almost. We just sit there quietly for a while, watching the people outside the window. My phone keeps buzzing with messages. Sarah, the anonymous contact. Emily. So what's next? Marcus eventually questions. I took another sip of my coffee, considering the final phase of this plan. Now, we wait for Monday. The weekend passed by in a haze of Chinese food and sleepless nights on Marcus's couch, and then Monday arrived. I made plans, thought about what I would do, and then when the day finally came, I was ready. I didn't feel as angry anymore, but I knew what I had to do. At 9 a.m, I went to Marcus's guest room to wake him up. It was time to get to work. I had received several more texts from Emily since the board meeting on Monday, but I had ignored all of them. I deleted the most recent one as well, without even reading it. My new apartment wouldn't be ready until tomorrow, but I couldn't wait another day. Not after what the anonymous source sent me last night. A recording from our bedroom the last time I was at a conference in Denver. You're really going to do this by yourself? Marcus asks from the doorway, holding a coffee mug. I have to. Well, let me at least give you a ride. I shook my head, saying, no, I don't want to risk it. I want to do this clean. Nothing clean about divorce, brother. No, I reply, looking at my phone again, but it can be precise. I drive to my old house. Emily's car isn't parked outside, which suggests that she's at work. She had a meeting with the board today. I'm not sure how it went, but I hope they don't fire her. I enter the house and start sorting through my stuff in the office. I take what's mine, putting it in one box, and then I put everything I want to get rid of in another. My phone rings. It's Sarah. It's Emily's lawyer. They're asking about a settlement. Fuck them, I reply. She gets what the prenup says. End of story. They're citing duress. I chuckled, shredding more papers. I'd like to see you try. Going through the office, I put everything in separate piles. The mailman slammed the door of his truck outside, and I nearly jumped out of my skin. But I looked out the window and saw it was just him. The bedroom was more difficult. There were memories everywhere. A scarf of hers was mixed in with my ties, and I tossed it into the burn pile. My phone buzzed again. Just uploaded the security footage from Murphy's bar last night. Want to watch? No, I reply. I'm done watching. I was packing up some of my books when I heard another car pulling up in front of the house. Emily's BMW. A moment later, I heard a key in the lock. James? She calls out on the stairs. I don't answer. I hear her footsteps on the stairs, and they don't sound like her usual confident stride. She emerges from the doorway, looking less sure of herself than usual. What are you doing? What does it look like? She looks at the boxes, the organized piles, the places where things are missing. You can't just leave. I can. That's a thing you can do when you get a divorce. I tape a box shut and mark it with a Sharpie. James, come on. She walks into the room. We should talk about this. We talked about it at dinner last week. You know, right before your life went to shit. The board is considering letting you go, she says. Wow, cool, I say, as I resume putting my things in my bag, not making eye contact with her. Is that really what you wanted? To ruin my life? I looked up at her. You did that yourself, I said. One lie at a time. My phone vibrated in my pocket. It was Marcus, checking in on me. What about the house? She asks, weakly. I'll be selling it. Sarah's already got the papers ready. You can't... Prenup, darling. Your father's idea, not mine. Funny, isn't it? She sits down on the bed, watching me pack up my things. Was any of it real? I blurt out, almost involuntarily. Huh? Me and you. This. I motioned to the room. Or was I just a good alibi? She looks like she's about to cry, but I've learned not to trust her tears either. Yeah, it was real. I did love you. Did? Got it. My phone buzzed again with another text from the unknown source. I ignored it. Who's helping you? She asks. There's someone telling you things. Does it matter? I deserve to know. I chuckled. Rights? You think you've got rights? She stood up, clearly pissed off. You like this, don't you? Seeing us fail? No, Emily. I'm not having fun. I tape up another box. I'm just doing what you wanted me to do. Her cell phone began to ring. She ignored it. What do you want? She says. We can pay you. You'll be okay. I stood up and looked at her, and realized I didn't know her at all. There's no price, I say softly. There's no fixing this. There's just ending it. James, I'm done in here. I lift the final box. The movers will be by tomorrow to pick up the furniture I'm keeping. The rest is yours until the house sells. She follows me down the stairs, talking about counseling, starting over, giving it a second chance. I put the box in my car. Please, she says one last time, as I open the driver's door. Don't go. I stop for a moment just outside the car. How exactly do you want me to leave, Emily? With a lie. That would be more your style. I close the car door and drive off. In the rearview mirror, I see Emily standing in the driveway, hugging herself. A few minutes later, Marcus texts me. All done? Yeah, I text back, driving away. It's done. As I drove away from Emily's house, I had one last box with me in the passenger seat. The following 3 weeks were a blur. I stayed in a couple of hotels and even spent a few nights at Marcus's place. I signed the separation papers, but I didn't send them over to Emily's lawyer. I don't know why. When I found an apartment, I applied for it and got it right away. The sun was just coming up outside my window. No curtains in the new place, just a few cardboard boxes and a coffee mug on the kitchen counter. I didn't even have a set anymore. Just one mug. I'd been at my new apartment for a few weeks now, but hadn't yet unpacked everything. There was still a lot of stuff in boxes. The silence was deafening at first, but I had begun to get used to it. My phone buzzed, and I saw a text message from Marcus. How's the new place? Good, I reply. I just got a couch yesterday. Do you need a hand with it? No, it was delivered. I even got throw pillows. You'd be impressed. I can do whatever I want now, I realize. I can put up any pictures I want on the walls. I can leave the dishes if I feel like it. I don't have to clean the bathroom every single day. The doorbell rang and I went to get it. It was Katie with some mail that had been delivered to her by mistake. Hey, James, she says, handing me an envelope. This was in my box. Appreciate it. Coffee? I just brewed a pot. I was surprised by her invite, and I realized that just a few weeks ago, I wouldn't have been able to have a casual conversation with anyone. Some other time? I have work, she smiles. It's so normal. Saturday or Sunday? Okay, I'll be here. It feels good to talk like this. Simple and straightforward. No lies or half-truths. Another call from the lawyer. Documents are ready for you to sign. Can you come by today? I look at the message again, and I feel it again, but this time it isn't so heavy. 3 p.m. is fine, I respond. I look around at the empty walls and decide I want to put something new up there. I figure it will help me move on, maybe. I get in my car and drive to the art store downtown. There's a section with art for sale, and I check it out. Need a hand? A voice behind me calls out. I turned around and saw Aisha, who looked just as surprised to see me as I was to see her. Didn't know you worked here, I say. Just started last month. Needed a change after, well, you know, she says. Both of us picturing that dinner party. Do you know much about abstract art? She looked at the one I was interested in. What are you in the market for? Something new. Different. Not landscapes? She asks, eyebrows raised. Emily liked landscapes. Okay, she nods and takes me to another area. These paintings are constantly shifting, changing, never settled. One caught my eye, a blue and white swirling mass. It's like staring at potential, I say. That's why I like abstract. It's whatever you want it to be. I bought it, along with a couple smaller pieces, and Aisha helped me wrap them up. You seem good, she says, scanning me through. More with it. Feel good, most days. It'll get easier. Believe me, I've been there. I get a text from Sarah saying she'll see me later. Speaking of easier, I say, grabbing my bags. Papers to sign today. Good luck. She gives me the receipt. And James? There are art gallery events that take place in the evening sometimes. Just FYI. I understand what she's saying. Okay, I'll remember that. So I go back home again and put up the paintings. It feels like I'm making the apartment mine, especially when I hang the blue and white one above my couch. Marcus texts me again, asking if I want to have dinner with him and if I really should be alone after such a big day. Actually, I think I'm just going to be by myself. I stop, then say, "But thanks. You got this, man." I spent the next few hours moving my things into my new apartment. It was quiet, but it felt nice, peaceful. I didn't bother setting up my computer or checking my email. That could wait. Katie's doorbell rang again. "Decided to cash in on that rain check," she says. "Or are you leaving?" I check my watch. Only 2 hours until I had to meet up with Sarah and Emily's lawyer. "Yeah, I've got a glass. Come on in." She walked inside my sparsely decorated apartment and looked around at the new artwork on the walls and the boxes. "I like it," she says, pointing at the abstract painting. "Very futuristic." I poured us each a glass, and we sat on the couch. "To new beginnings," she says, holding up her glass. "To possibilities," I reply. The wine is different than what Emily would have picked. The conversation is normal, though. There's nothing untoward about it. And then my phone buzzes one last time. Phase 3 done. Have a good day. I swiped away the call and focused back on Katie's story about some new photography project she was working on. The blue hues were blending into the wall now, and I realized I was smiling for the first time in a long time. The past was still there with me, but I was beginning to look past it, and there was a future waiting for me on the other side of it. The rest of the evening I spent in the apartment, and I went to bed early. I hadn't slept so easy in a long time, and when I woke up the next day, I had made up my mind. I looked around the kitchen in my new home, wondering if I'd made the right decision to sign up for a cooking class. It started tomorrow night. "Can't survive off takeout anymore," I say, but we both know I'm not just talking about takeout. The kitchen still felt too clean, and I still hadn't used it for anything other than making toast. The next evening, I drove to the community center. There were already a few cars in the parking lot, and I saw people inside talking and putting on aprons. "You coming?" Aisha knocks on my window. She's holding a chef's knife bag. She looks at me warmly. "You're a teacher here?" I ask, getting out of the car. "Yeah, just got the job. I figured I should put all this new energy to good use." I enter the teaching kitchen and find a spot at one of the 12 workstations. "Okay, folks," Aisha says. She has a way of naturally taking charge. "This is Culinary Foundations. I'm Chef Aisha, and tonight we're going to be honing our knife skills and learning the basics of mise en place." She shows how to do it properly, chopping the vegetables into even pieces. "Think of it like cooking," she says. "If you hold on too long, your food burns. If you let go too soon, you ruin the flavor." A woman in her 50s on the seat next to mine, without a wedding ring, was having a hard time holding on. "Here," I'm saying, "you just have to hold it like this." I show her what Aisha just taught us. "Thanks," she takes it. "I'm Patricia." "James." She didn't have a secret plan or anything. She just wanted me to cut the onion in the right way. Aisha walked around the room, correcting the student's form, and she gave me an approving nod when she saw I'd followed her instructions. "Nice technique. You cook a lot?" "Been binging cooking shows. Haven't been sleeping well." She actually laughed, and it didn't sound like the fake, rehearsed kind. "Well, since you're up all night anyway, teach Patricia the right way to wield it." The rest of the evening is spent learning a new language of culinary terminology. It was nice to have something to do, and it took my mind off my anxiety. "Next week," Aisha is saying as we're cleaning up, "we're going to make something you can actually eat. Simple soups and broths." Patricia looks over at me as she's rinsing off her knife. "Want to be station partners next week? I could use the help." My first inclination is to find a way to brush her off, but yeah, I guess. As we walked back to our cars, Aisha came up to me. "You did great tonight, with the knives and with the folks. One step at a time." "That's how it stays." She pauses. "We normally go for coffee after class. You're welcome to come." I think about my empty apartment. Maybe another time. She shrugged and said, well, just let me know if you change your mind. I went home and began practicing my cutting skills. It felt good to be doing it again. I thought of all the little pieces of carrot and onion as I cut them up, but there was no one watching me, no one to judge, and that was all that mattered. My phone buzzed with a message from Katie next door. Something's burning. I stared at the neat piles of vegetables and made a decision. Hey, you want to try something new with me? I'm making soup. 5 minutes, I'll bring the bread. I start making the soup. Katie drops by with a loaf of fresh sourdough bread. We eat in the kitchen, chatting about nothing in particular. This is good, she says, going for more. You should cook more. I'm gonna try. Once she's gone, I tidy up and put away the dishes, a welcome change from my usual routine of eating cold cereal over the sink. A text message from Marcus arrives. How'd it go? Actually, it's all right. I signed up for the whole 6 weeks. Good for you, man. I save her number in my phone, thinking about next week. The silence isn't quite so deafening anymore, filled instead with the promise of possibility and the simple pleasure of learning something new. The cutting board needs to be oiled, I notice. Another task for tomorrow, another small step forward. The night settles around me, and for once, I'm looking forward to what comes next. The next 3 weeks passed in a blur of knife skills and new routines. Each Tuesday evening brought another cooking class, another small victory over the emptiness that had threatened to swallow me whole. But today wasn't about dicing onions or perfecting my roux. It was about ending things properly, officially. I'd chosen this date deliberately, knowing the finality I needed would require the same steady hands I'd been developing in Aisha's kitchen. The next morning, I stepped out of the building with the signed divorce papers in my hand. I felt a sense of relief. It was over. This chapter of my life was finally over. You did good in there, Sarah said as she joined me on the sidewalk. I'm proud of you. I nodded, feeling grateful for her support. Emily had tried to make it difficult, but I had held my ground. As I walked to my car, I couldn't help but think about Emily. She had looked so different today. Her eyes were red and puffy, and her hair was messy. She hadn't said a word to me, only nodded when the judge asked her if she agreed to the terms of the divorce. I wondered if she had thought about me at all during the night. Had she regretted what she had done? Had she missed me? My phone rang. It was Marcus. That's it. I signed the documents. Do you want me to join you? Not now. I think I just need to walk. Check in with me when you want. I don't want to go home just yet, though, so I decide to take a walk in our old neighborhood. It's strange to be back here, knowing that soon it won't be my place anymore. It's like revisiting a chapter of a book I've already finished. I pass by the coffee shop where we had our first date. I wonder if anyone is sitting at our table right now, having their own first date. James? I turned around to see Aisha coming out of the coffee shop. Hey there, she greets me, still smiling. On a walk to clear your head? Yeah, sort of. I just finished signing the agreement. She didn't ask any more questions after that. Can I walk with you for a bit? Okay. We pass the dry cleaners, the bookstore. There's something different about you, Aisha says. Lighter. Yeah, I think I let go of something I didn't even realize I was holding on to. A car honked nearby, Samuel's BMW pulling into the driveway. He didn't see us, too busy on the phone. Karen's car wasn't there. Apparently they're splitting up too, Aisha says. One thing leads to another. She touched my arm. This is my stop. You gonna be okay? Getting there. One step at a time. All right. Catch you at cooking class? Yep. Patricia's knife skills need some serious work. She laughs and turns down her street, leaving me to walk on my own. I pass by the park where I used to run with Emily. The same trails are still there, but I don't feel any desire to go for a jog, to revisit those old memories. There's a text from Katie. Want to come over for dinner? I made too much lasagna. I look at the text. I've left the old neighborhood behind me. Ahead lies my new apartment, Katie's lasagna, and a life without lies. Half an hour, I text back. I'll bring wine. It was a different feeling walking back. I felt like I was moving towards something instead of away from something else. That notification popped up again. Congratulations on your freedom. File closed. I saved the message, not out of anger this time, but to keep it as a reminder. The sun was setting when I reached my car. It was time to go home. I left the past behind me, feeling it grow more distant with each step I took. I knew there would be more struggles ahead of me, more storms to weather, but at least I would face them with a clear head, and without the heavy burden of betrayal holding me back. I was looking forward to eating that lasagna Katie had made for me, and continuing with the cooking lessons. This time, because I wanted to, not to learn about my past. I picked up my pace a little, eager to get back to my new life. The sun was setting when I reached my car. I sat down and looked at the pile of papers on the passenger seat. They represented my past, but they also represented a new beginning. I started the engine and drove away from my old neighborhood. It was time to embrace the future. A few weeks later, Marcus asked me if I wanted to join him and a few of his friends on a hiking trip in the Evergreen Mountains. I said yes, eager to get out of the city and explore new places. I got out of the car and put on my new backpack. Marcus was looking at a map, double-checking the trailhead to make sure we were going the right way. There were only a few other cars in the parking lot, and the people from those vehicles were already standing by the beginning of the path, waiting for us. "You up for this?" Marcus asks with a grin, fiddling with his compass. "First hike's always the toughest." "Tougher than the divorce papers?" He smiled, a real smile. I was still getting used to seeing those again. Difficult in a different way. This way gets you somewhere. As we got closer, I saw there were 4 other people standing around, all wearing hiking gear. A woman with graying hair tied into a ponytail stepped forward. "You must be James. Marcus said you'd be coming. I'm Carol." We go around the circle, making introductions. Dave and Michael, father and son who wanted to spend some time together this weekend. Beth, a retired school teacher, and Tom, who doesn't say much, but who I instantly feel a kinship with. "We typically take it slow at first," Carol says, as we approach the hike. Things pick up around the 2-mile mark. The trail started off easy, just like the guide had said it would. My boots crunched on the dirt, feeling good to be outside and away from the sterile, carpeted floors of my office. "Where'd you hear about this group?" I say to Marcus, matching his stride as we follow the pack. I started coming after Sarah. Needed a place without any memories of her. I realized that the mountain didn't remember my ex-wife, just like it didn't remember Emily. "Watch your step here," Beth said, as we reached an uneven part of the trail. There were roots sticking out of the ground, and we had to walk in single file for a little while. I stopped talking and focused on my footing. I didn't have any service on my phone, which was actually quite nice. "Water break," Carol says when we hit a natural stopping point. "Nice view as well." We stop at the precipice, looking out over the valley, and I can see the city where my other self is living my life. "First time?" Tom asks in a hushed tone, extending some trail mix. "Is it that obvious?" "You're looking behind you a lot. We all did." The trail mix is salty and delicious. It makes me realize that people are always easier to talk to when you're sitting on a mountain with them, sharing food. "Lost my wife," I say for some reason. "To the trail? Or to another man?" Beth asks. "Another man," I reply. "Men." "Their loss," Carol says, grabbing her pack. "The mountain's still here. This part is pretty steep, and I start to feel it in muscles I didn't even know I had." "Take your time," Marcus instructs from behind. "It's all about the rhythm." I regulate my breathing, pacing it with each step and each new sight we encounter. The trees grow denser and then thin out again, giving us brief glimpses of the sky. "Michael, tell James about that rock formation we saw," Dave calls back at one point. Michael eagerly points out a large outcropping of rock. "We call it the Guardian," he says. "Every time it looks different. Depends on the light." I look at the shape it's casting. It doesn't lie or try to trick my eyes. It just is. "Almost there," Carol says. "Hardest part right at the end." She was right. The trail gets so steep, you need to use your hands and feet to climb, but I just felt more and more sure of myself. The top of the hill was windy, and we all stood at different points, taking it in. "Drink this," Marcus says, handing me his water bottle. "It's a Summit custom. Tastes better than anything." He's right, though. It does make it taste better. "We tend to hang out up here for half an hour or so," Carol says. "Give it time to absorb." They all fall silent once again, and I make my way over to the east side of the summit. "Nice vantage point," says Tom, now beside me. "Things are clearer from this angle." "Yes, that's what the mountains are for," he replies. A hawk can be seen flying above. I don't need the phone to capture the moment. You want to head down now? Marcus asks after a moment. Different muscles, different challenges. Going down is easier, but you still have to pay attention. We began to pair off differently now, since we weren't working as hard and could talk more. Next weekend? Carol shouts as we get to the parking lot. New trail, same mountains. I found myself doing the same, planning for next week. You'll be back, won't you? Michael asks, catching me off guard. I look down at my dirty boots, at the mountain we just climbed, at these people who only want me to be here. Wouldn't miss it, I reply. And I mean it. You see, he says, I told you. When we drive back, I notice my reflection in the car window. I look different, I can tell. My cheeks are red and there's a healthy glow to my face, and I can breathe properly again. It feels good. Just as we reach the city, my phone reconnects to the internet. I receive a bunch of messages from my boss, but for some reason I don't feel as stressed when I read them. Coffee? Marcus asks as we approach town. I think I better head home. Cooking class this evening. He nodded. Next weekend, then. It's not going anywhere. Neither was I realized. Not anymore. The fall came and went, and so did the winter. Marcus and I went hiking every other weekend, and every Thursday I went to my cooking class. It became a part of my routine, and I began to enjoy it more and more. I still loved the mountains, but my apartment became a different sort of peak for me, one that I could climb every day. The smell of food was filling my kitchen as I prepared dinner for the two of us. I had taken 3 cooking classes in the last 6 months. Watching the risotto, man. Aisha would be pissed if I ruined her recipe. The doorbell rings and my boyfriend goes to get it. While he's away, I stir the risotto, hearing the sounds of people talking and laughing in the living room. What's cooking? Aisha asks, entering the kitchen. She looks at the risotto. Looks good. Thanks. She took out a few things from her backpack. Just wait till you see what we're making in advanced techniques next week. Tom and Carol came over a little while later, fresh from a hike, and Beth showed up not long after that. Hey, James, Katie says from the living room. Tell them about your client meeting yesterday. I chuckle, turning down the heat. You mean the meeting or the cooking lesson I gave my boss? Both, a few voices yell. I tell them the story while I serve them the first course, something I never would have thought possible only a few months ago. They laugh at my jokes, and I get the sense that they aren't doing it out of some ulterior motive. You know, Patricia says, taking her plate, this all began with learning how to use a knife. Some of us needed that more than others, says Tom. Okay, but I can julienne now. The discussion carries on throughout dinner, evolving from work stories to hiking tales, and cooking failures to successes. Although nobody mentions Emily or the others, they aren't missed. James, Marcus says, when things are quiet, you remember our first hike? You were looking back the whole time, weren't you? I nodded and poured us more wine. That feels like a whole other lifetime. It's 'cause it was, Aisha says. But you're not that person now. Somehow, that doesn't sound so strange. Seeing the faces of my friends, I realize they all have the same look as me. Speaking of change, Katie says, do you think we should tell them? Everyone looked at us, waiting for us to answer. And it wasn't the wine making me feel all warm and fuzzy inside. Katie's going to showcase my photography at her gallery next month, I say. Guess those sunrise hikes were good for something other than cardio. Everybody congratulated me and wanted to see pictures. I showed them some of my favorite images from the trip. Misty mountains, forested trails in the fall, and a picture of our group standing in front of a backdrop of a burning sunset. Yeah, Katie says. That's the one, the lead. It sums it all up, Carol says. The adventure, the friends. The next chapter, Marcus says, lifting his drink, and the road ahead. Everyone raised their glasses and said cheers. The music began playing again, and people started chatting in small groups, breaking off to speak to different people. Katie and I stood by the window, looking out at the city. What's on your mind? Paths, I reply, that the most difficult ones, sometimes, are the right ones. She grabs my hand. Do you regret any of it? I look at the people around me, the home and family I've found, the life I've built. I can see the mountains in the distance, outside the window, where we'll go hiking tomorrow. Not anymore. A new song begins to play, and I hear laughter coming from the kitchen, where Aisha and Tom are talking about her famous tiramisu. Marcus raises a glass at me from across the room, and I raise mine back at him. I have a feeling in my heart, like I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be for the first time in a long time. Tomorrow will be a new day with new challenges, but for right now, I'm just happy to be here with my friends. And as I look around at the house that feels like a home again, I realize that maybe that's all that really matters. Katie gives my hand a squeeze and I squeeze hers back. We both turn back to our friends and join in the conversation.
All right, everyone's presentations are done. Nick, the manager, said as he tried to move the discussion forward. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me and began to speak. There's apparently someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. His lackey, Mike, of course, agreed with Nick. I'm leaving. After leaving the meeting room, I started to shut down my computer. I noticed that an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking, there's no point in speaking up, no one will listen, I went home quietly. The next day, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. He was staring at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick? Is something wrong? Mike looked at the screen with him. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Knowing the reason for Mike's distress, I thought to myself, serves them right. My name is Adam. My mother passed away when I was in the 9th grade, and I was raised by my father. Well, you could hardly call it being raised. After my mother passed, my father changed. He drowned his sorrows in alcohol, and though he still went to work, he squandered our living expenses on horse racing. Because of that, I had to start working part-time as soon as I entered high school. Every month, I went to the convenience store with bills in hand that couldn't be auto-deducted from my father's account. Even though I endured it because I didn't want to be alone, I reached my limit in my second year of high school and dropped out. I found a live-in job at a distant inn. Thank you for everything. The day I left home, my father, still staring at the TV, spoke. Take care. That was our last conversation. Back then, 18 wasn't the age of majority, so I needed my father's permission to work, and I couldn't hide my place of employment. Yet, my father never visited me even once. I kept working just to survive, and before I knew it, I was 42. Years of hard work paid off, and I was transferred to the headquarters. I was thrilled to be recognized by the company, as I thought I'd be working in the field until retirement due to my lack of formal education. Listen up. Our work can change the future of our employees. Don't drag us down. On my first day after the transfer, Nick, dressed in an expensive suit, spoke sternly. There was a reason for this. Our inn was located in a prominent tourist destination, known so well that everyone in the state could sing its commercial jingle. At its peak, we had 5 locations within the state. But that was long ago. Due to financial difficulties and aging facilities, only the place where I had worked for many years and the original establishment remained. I was prepared to lose my job anytime, but now there was a glimmer of hope. With the rise of social media, the tourist area where the inn was located started gaining attention again. Depending on how hard the sales department, where I was transferred, worked. We could either thrive or be forced to give up this prime location to the new hotel chains continuously popping up. For Nick, who had switched careers from another industry to strengthen our sales, this was a battle he couldn't afford to lose. I understood why he had to be strict. I will do my best. Nick sneered at my enthusiastic declaration. Did you not hear what I said? I'm sorry. I thought I was listening carefully. Out of habit from years of customer service, I apologized reflexively, though I had no idea what had offended him. Someone was watching me with a smirk. In this department, there are those who are expected to excel and those who have been shoved here because they have nowhere else to go. You are the latter. It was Mike, the section chief. He's 7 years younger, at 35. But he was called to headquarters much earlier than I was and had been moving around within the headquarters ever since. I'm not jealous, but I can't accept that he's my boss. Graduating from a prestigious university, he has an unusually high pride and caused many problems as a newbie, making things very difficult for me when I was the front desk leader. When I found out Mike was transferred to the sales department a month before me, I was disheartened. Mike is right. With just a middle school diploma, there's not much you can do. Don't even think about achieving results. As if I didn't exist, Nick remarked, I'm thirsty. Mike eagerly ran to the coffee maker. It seems Mike is Nick's lackey. I regretted being happy about my transfer to headquarters, wishing I had stayed on site forever. Send a direct mail to every company on this list by the end of the day. Nick only assigned me tasks that even a new graduate could handle. What? There are over 1,000 companies. You want me to send to all of them by today? Yes, if you and your fellow misfits split the work, even those with nowhere else to go should finish by today. I glanced at the employees typing away expressionlessly. They were worn out from customer service, only thinking about leaving on time, or were women reassigned after having children. With zero motivation for work. Even Sam, a new graduate from the same university as Mike, who was supposed to be among the expected achievers, had no enthusiasm for the job. Having joined the company wanting to do customer service. I don't care what they say, I plan to quit anytime, he said. Only Nick and Mike were highly motivated, making all the decisions between the two of them. I originally only wanted to work at the inn to survive and had no particular attachment to this job. I swallowed my words, thinking I had no right to reprimand them. About a month after the transfer, Nick told us with a frustrated look. To commemorate the 50th anniversary, we've decided to create a plan exclusive for one group per day. Originally, Mike and I were supposed to come up with it, but our president, Mr. Thompson, insists on hearing everyone's opinions. So, you all get a chance. As Nick explained, Mike began handing out prints. Make sure not to embarrass Nick. If your ideas are half-baked, you'll have to redo them. It seemed that they had printed his handwritten notes by Mr. Thompson, which included several questions and a section for free responses. It made sense why Nick had to seek our input, given that all responses had to be submitted to Mr. Thompson. We were given a week to think about it, and a meeting was scheduled to compile our ideas. My plan is to let guests enjoy both the old and modern America. Nick began the presentations. Guests would watch a master confectioner at a nearby traditional sweet shop make sweets in front of them. The welcome drink would be premium tea in a bottle. Nick's plan was certainly attractive. After his presentation, Nick called on us to present in the order we were seated. Just as I stood up for my turn. All right, everyone's presentations are done. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me. There's someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. He was likely talking about me. I joined the company as a part-timer and was made a full-time employee when I turned 20. That was 20 years ago, so Nick and Mike probably had no chance to know until recently. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. After that, Nick kept creating opportunities to solicit everyone's opinions, purposefully excluding me from speaking. The meeting unexpectedly heated up and went past the scheduled end time. A few people asked to leave, and the discussion continued with the remaining few. Still here? Normally, you'd leave in that situation. Though I had no attachment to the job initially, hearing kind words from customers made me want to make them happier. For someone like me, with nowhere to go, the inn was my home and customer service was my life. I felt pathetic about my current self. I'm leaving. I left the conference room and started shutting down my computer. I noticed an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking no one would listen to what I had to say anyway, I quietly went home. The next day, while preparing the DM as instructed, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. In his haste to stand up, he hit his knee on the desk. He stared at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick! What's wrong? Mike, thinking he should be the first to rush over, approached Nick while still wearing his coat. He peered at the screen with Nick. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Who is responsible for this company? Nick, more irritated than ever, asked, and Mike answered without checking. Probably Sam. Sam wasn't there because he was attending a morning training session for new hires. Nick gave up on getting angry and returned his gaze to the screen. They were looking at an email that arrived right after the end of the working day yesterday. Apparently, no one, including me, had checked it before leaving. The email was from a large company that used us for their annual employee trips. The president and executives of that company also frequently used our services personally. President of the company, Mr. Mason himself, had declared that neither he nor his company would ever use our services again. Well, some companies cancel their employee trips or stop using our services due to financial struggles. Let's just move on. Mike kept wiping the sweat from his forehead with a handkerchief. Knowing why Mike was so agitated, I quietly watched their interaction. Do you know how much revenue we get from that company? We can find other guests to fill the rooms, but we'll lose the banquet costs, gift shop revenue, rental car fees, and more. Moreover, the gifts were supposed to be prepared by the traditional confectionery shop involved in Nick's proposed plan. If it's known that we incurred such a huge loss at this critical time, Nick's position in the company would be jeopardized. Nick took a deep breath, seemingly trying to calm himself. All right, Mike. Go to New York right now and apologize to Mr. Mason. What? You're coming with me, right? I have urgent work to do. I trust you, which is why I'm entrusting this to you. Please. Mike, believing Nick's sincerity, agreed with a determined look on his face, saying, yes. That's Nick for you. Even if Mike went to apologize, Nick would shift all the blame onto him if the client didn't change their mind. Well, it was Mike's fault to begin with, so it served him right. About 3 hours later, Sam answered a call from somewhere and repeatedly apologized, saying, I'm very sorry. Everyone watched to see what was happening. After ending the call, he informed Nick with a weary tone. When Mike arrived at the client's company, he only made things worse, further infuriating Mr. Mason. He was demanding, get his boss here immediately. It was no wonder Sam was exhausted, dealing with such a call right after returning from training. What is that idiot doing? All right, Adam, you're coming with me. If sacrificing Mike didn't work, then I must be next. Normally, I'd want to refuse at all costs, but I saw an opportunity in this situation. If I can be of assistance, I'd be happy to join you. I immediately followed Nick, and we flew to New York. When we introduced ourselves at the reception, it became clear how serious the situation was, as the receptionist personally escorted us to the president's office. Angry voices leaked through the door, making both Nick and me uneasy. Excuse me. I'm Nick, the supervisor. I understand my subordinate has caused you trouble, and I deeply apologize. Nick, with his experience in the corporate world, knew enough to offer an apology before excuses. However, his customer service skills left much to be desired. I sighed as I saw Mike trembling like a small dog in the corner of the room. What kind of training are you giving your subordinates? Mr. Mason glared at Nick with a red face. The intensity of his gaze made even Nick take a step back. Regrettably, I joined this company only 2 years ago and was unaware of Mike's issues. I should have identified his shortcomings sooner. Indeed. I should have realized sooner. No sensible person would come to apologize and then give a lengthy presentation on the drawbacks of not using their IN. Nick froze, his mouth slightly open. Suspecting the worst, I picked up the documents that had fallen to the floor. It seemed Mike hastily prepared these documents on the plane, listing the disadvantages. Disadvantage 1: if you change the venue for the company trip, employees might suspect it's for cost-cutting reasons, leading to a negative impression. Reading it aloud half-jokingly, Nick snatched the papers from my hand and checked the contents with a furious expression. Among the stack of documents was a receipt from a nearby convenience store's copy machine. I felt a pang of dread, hoping he hadn't shown the receipt as well. What do you think he said when I asked what kind of nerve he had to do this? I'm very sorry. Faced with the dire situation, Nick must have thought there was nothing left to do but apologize. In a voice smaller than I'd ever heard from him, he uttered words of apology. He said, I'm a Harvard graduate. I don't believe I said anything wrong. Mike, what have you done? Forgetting his plan to pin the blame on Mike, Nick yelled loudly, even in front of Mr. Mason. I didn't do anything wrong. You're still saying that? Look at him. Mike pointed at me with a shaking hand. I was assigned to headquarters in my 20s and now I'm a section chief. This guy only made it to headquarters at 42. Everything I've done proves I was right. So why are we losing the contract? Having said his piece, Mike collapsed to the floor. Of course. You were sent there because you had nowhere else to go. Mike never expected to hear such words from someone he looked down upon. He lunged at me, and Nick hurriedly stepped in to stop him. Mr. Thompson told me Mike is a quick thinker, and to take good care of him. There's no way he was pushed aside. Don't make things worse here. He didn't say quick thinker, he said only quick-witted, didn't he? I don't remember that part. I recalled the many troubles Mike caused when he was a newbie. When Mike was on the front line, his pride was so high that he never apologized to customers. Customer service, especially in our job, doesn't work alone. It brings both good and bad situations. If the front staff or housekeepers made mistakes, or the cleaning company didn't properly clean a room, one had to apologize to the customers regardless of personal fault. Mike, in such situations, would never apologize, insisting he wasn't at fault. This often angered customers, and as the front desk leader, I frequently had to apologize on his behalf. He caused complaints and disrupted operations, which is why he was quickly moved to headquarters. In departments where he didn't interact directly with customers, his quick thinking was beneficial and things went well. But it seemed his flaws were starting to show. Corporate reservations are supposed to be entered into the system by the sales representative. But a quick check yesterday revealed that more than 10 items were missing from the client's reservation. The handover document clearly stated what needed to be prepared. Why didn't you enter it into the system? Why do we have to give them special treatment? Filling rooms near the banquet hall, setting up all the food in advance. Specifying the brand of wine, they're too demanding. No wonder he always angered customers, I thought, feeling a headache coming on. Grouping them in rooms near the banquet hall is for our benefit too. It makes it easier for the staff to set up beds and serve breakfast since everyone's schedule is synchronized. As for the other requests, Mr. Mason suggested them to lighten our load. I didn't know that. Nick finally seemed to realize that Mike was the one who had angered the client. What did you say to them? I just told them we wouldn't give them special treatment anymore. We shouldn't waste effort on things that don't bring in money. I was utterly exasperated at his lack of understanding of customer service. Of course, we shouldn't comply with unreasonable demands. But carrying over successful practices from past stays makes customers feel remembered and enhances their experience. Good memories encourage repeat visits. That's part of our job. I looked down at Mike, who was sitting on the floor. In our job, nothing is a waste. Mr. Thompson likely moved you to the sales department, hoping you'd finally understand this. How do you think he feels now that you failed to meet his expectations? Mike, tears in his eyes, fled the president's office. I was amazed he still hadn't apologized. You have it tough, Adam. It's okay, we're all employees of the same company. I deeply apologize for this disrespectful incident. Especially after all the care you've shown us. If it weren't for you, Adam, I really would have stopped staying here. When I heard you were moving to the sales department, I was willing to reconsider if you handled it. Seeing us talk so amicably, Nick's face contorted. Do you two know each other? Adam's service is excellent. I always requested him specifically. Normally, we don't accept specific staff requests, but we made an exception for Mr. Mason, adjusting my shifts accordingly. He had personally stayed at our hotel just before my transfer, and during casual conversation, I mentioned, I'm moving to the sales department soon. If I hadn't told him then, things could have been much worse. Please continue to take care of us. I look forward to it. On the return flight, Nick awkwardly offered me a can of beer. It's still working hours. Of course, I had no intention of forgiving him for a single beer. Nick might try to pin everything on Mike and avoid any consequences. While pondering this, a startling fact came to light. Nick, the tea bottles for the plan have arrived. I handed Nick a bottle labeled with our inn's name. They look good. What are you talking about? These are plastic bottles. I had assumed we would use the trendy, high-end bottling tea. But what arrived were ordinary plastic bottles of tea with customized labels. The only unique aspect was the label, which had the inn's name, making it look customized. Upon further investigation, I discovered that a substantial amount of money was set to be paid to the tea company. It was priced like bottling tea. Does this plastic bottle really cost $100 each? The tea inside is specially blended for us. The extra cost is for that. Wouldn't it be better to use another tea company? Or is there a specific reason we must use this one? As Nick continued to make excuses, I showed him a printed email. I informed the tea company's president, Mr. Mitchell, that we discovered irregular payments and he confessed. He said you two were high school classmates and planned to split the extra money. That idiot. Why did he confess? That's not important. You should worry about yourself, this could turn into a police matter. Opening the bottle cap, I suggested. How about calming down with this tea? It supposedly has a relaxing effect. Nick drank the tea frantically. In the following days, decisions were made about their fates. Mike was reassigned to the General Affairs Department, with no chance of transfer or promotion, as per Mr. Thompson's orders. As for Nick, since the payment to the tea company hadn't yet been made, he narrowly avoided legal trouble. Instead, he was encouraged to leave the company, and to avoid further complications, Nick submitted his resignation. Rumor has it that connections between HR departments have made it difficult for him to find new employment. Even though it was good to have those two gone, something unexpected happened in the sales department. Everyone became motivated and united in refining the 50th anniversary plan. In the end, my plan was adopted. We collaborated with the Tourist Information Center to provide personalized guides. The plan, tailored to the number of guests, was truly special for the 50th anniversary. Hey, is Adam's family coming to stay? I immediately booked that special plan for my family. Sam noticed it on the reservation list and quickly picked up on it. Yes, I'm inviting my father. That's great. I might invite my parents too. I lacked the courage to face my father just as Adam. But here, with the confidence Mr. Mason praised, I felt ready. The 50th anniversary plan was a perfect opportunity to reconnect with my father. I hoped to bring back the days when we could laugh together as we once did.